2. WebTV television computer convergence. When the living room was supposed to become the internet. The prediction, what we thought. In the mid-1990s, one of the most widely shared assumptions about the digital future was that the television and the computer would merge. Not metaphorically, literally. The TV, already the most dominant object in the home, would absorb the functions of the personal computer. Browsing the web, sending email, shopping, reading news, and even basic productivity would move from desks into the living room. The future of computing, many believed, would not be a keyboard and monitor in a spare room, but a screen on the wall controlled from the couch. In this vision, the computer was transitional. The television was permanent. Once the internet became visual, interactive, and easy enough to use, it would naturally migrate to the device people already understood. Families would gather around a single connected screen. Information would be shared, communal, and passive enough to feel familiar. The living room would become the front door to the digital world. Standing in 1999, this did not sound like a bold prediction. It sounded like common sense. Why this prediction made sense in 1999? To a reader in their 20s today, this idea can sound oddly backward. Why would anyone think the future of computing lived inside a television? The answer lies in how dominant and how unchallenged television still was in 1999. At the time, TV was the most successful consumer technology ever created. Nearly every household had one. Many had two. It shaped daily routines, family schedules, shared culture, and even furniture layout. Entire evenings were organized around broadcast schedules. Television was not just entertainment. It was how people experienced the world together. Computers, by contrast, were still optional. In 1999, only around 40 to 45% of U.S. households owned a personal computer. Internet access was often slow, noisy, and fragile, dial-up connections that tied up phone lines. Many people had never used a mouse, let alone typed comfortably. Computers were commonly shared, placed in bedrooms, offices, or study corners, not central spaces. Crucially, computers felt individual. Television felt social. From that perspective, convergence felt inevitable. If the internet was going to reach everyone, not just students, professionals, and hobbyists, it would need to live on the most familiar screen in the house. Expecting people to adopt computers en masse felt less realistic than bringing the internet to television. There was also a strong accessibility argument. Keyboards intimidated many users. Remote controls did not. Television interfaces were simple. Navigation could be linear. Content could be curated. The complexity of computing could be hidden behind menus and channels. And above all, the idea matched the emotional atmosphere of the late 1990s. The new millennium was imagined as more connected, more communal, more shared. The future wasn't supposed to isolate people behind desks. It was supposed to bring them together. The living room, not the office, felt like the right setting. Who said it, and where? One of the clearest and most influential articulations of this vision came from Bill Gates in his 1995 book, The Road Ahead. Gates did not frame convergence as a speculative fantasy. He described it as a natural progression of computing and media. As bandwidth increased and interfaces improved, the distinction between televisions and computers would blur. Screens would become smarter, content would become interactive. The internet would flow seamlessly into everyday life through familiar devices. At the time, this view carried enormous weight. Microsoft was not just a software company. It was the company shaping how hundreds of millions of people interacted with computers. Gates' credibility rested not on futurism, but on execution. When he described the future, readers assumed he was describing a roadmap, not a guess. The idea also found concrete expression in products like WebTV, launched in 1996 and later acquired by Microsoft. WebTV promised to bring email and web browsing to television sets via simple set-top box and remote control. It was slow, limited, and awkward, but it existed, which mattered. In the late 1990s, the presence of even imperfect implementations reinforced the sense that convergence was already underway. What actually happened 2000 to 2025? The prediction was right, but not in the way anyone expected. Television and the internet did converge. The living room screen became connected. Streaming, on-demand content, apps, and internet-enabled services are now standard features of televisions. Smart TVs routinely run operating systems, connect to Wi-Fi, access cloud services, and integrate with voice assistants. By that measure, the convergence was fully realized. But the direction of influence reversed. Instead of the television absorbing the computer absorbed the television. The internet did not migrate into TV culture. TV migrated into internet culture. Content became on-demand rather than scheduled. Interfaces became app-based rather than channel-based. Recommendation algorithms replaced programming guides. Individual accounts replaced shared family viewing by default. Most importantly, the center of gravity moved away from the living room. The real convergence device was not the TV, it was the smartphone. By the late 2000s and early 2010s, internet access became personal, mobile, and constant. Screens multiplied instead of centralizing. People watched different content at the same time, in the same room, on different devices. The shared viewing experience that defined television culture weakened, replaced by personalized feeds and individual schedules. The living room remained connected, but it was no longer the center. In hindsight, WebTV failed not because convergence was wrong, but because timing and form were misunderstood. The infrastructure, interfaces, and business models required for seamless convergence did not exist in the 1990s, and when they finally arrived, they favored personal devices over communal ones. Still, the core prediction held: television is no longer a passive broadcast medium. It is a networked computer with a screen measured in inches instead of pixels. Verdict: status. Realized. Television-computer convergence happened decisively. Modern televisions are internet devices by default. Streaming platforms dominate global media consumption. Broadcast schedules are secondary. Software updates, apps, and connectivity are standard expectations. The idea that a television would be a dumb screen now feels archaic. The prediction succeeded in substance, even if the social experience it imagined, families gathering around a single connected screen, did not endure. Why it played out this way? The prediction succeeded because it correctly identified where value would accumulate, at the intersection of content and connectivity. But it failed to anticipate how personalization would reshape media consumption. As bandwidth increased and devices shrank, the economic and behavioral incentives favored individual screens over shared ones. Advertisers preferred targeted audiences. Platforms preferred logged-in users. Consumers preferred control. The living room did not disappear. It simply lost its monopoly on attention. This outcome reflects a broader lesson repeated throughout this book. When technology enables personalization at scale, shared experiences often fragment, not because people reject them, but because convenience quietly wins. What this prediction teaches us about the future. This case shows how easily we mistake the right destination for the wrong vehicle. The convergence of media and computing was real. What changed was the path. The future arrived through pockets and palms rather than couches and coffee tables. The mistake was not believing in convergence. It was assuming that familiarity would outweigh flexibility. In 1999, that assumption made sense. Television was the most trusted screen people had. Computers were still intimidating. Smartphones did not exist. From that world, convergence had to look like WebTV. From ours, it looks like Netflix apps, streaming sticks, and screens everywhere. One sentence takeaway. Television did become a computer, but the future chose personal screens over the shared living room.